Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. For those who are connecting with us from outside and those who are connecting us from here, welcome to this event on the contribution of competition policy to the resurgence of SMEs post-COVID-19, a project of UNCTAD in collaboration with ESCAP. And today we also have our local host, the TCCT from Thailand, and we are delighted to be here in this beautiful city of Bangkok. So because we are a little bit late, because we are trying to do the technical bits of the meeting, we are going now to the opening remarks, and we're going to have representatives of TCCT, UNCTAD, and ESCAP speak to us this morning. On this session, we are going to have Professor Sakon. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we are going to have Professor Sakon, then we are going to have a video recording from our chief and director, Mrs. Teresa Moreira from UNCTAD, and then we are going to have Ms. Ndtp from ESCAP speaking to us in this session. And without further ado, we ask Professor Sakon to deliver his speech. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone from Thailand, and Your Excellency, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, both here and in the virtual meetings. It is my pleasure today to welcome all of you to this conference. And as Elizabeth mentioned, I am also very delighted that we can arrange this meeting face-to-face today. This meeting also helps us to know that we are come to at the end of the tunnel of the COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know that during the pandemic, there is so much indication on the business operators, particularly for the MSMEs. We can observe a lot of business conduct, both structure and behavior of every sector in business operation. And what is more crucial, we can observe the rise of the digital platforms, which change the behavior of the consumer and also affect the business operation at the global level. These two examples indicate about the implication on the MSME, not just in Thailand or in regional level, but also at the global level as well. So today, it is an opportunity for us from Thailand on behalf of the Trade Competition Commission of Thailand, UNCTAD, and UN ESCAP, that we come together today to share the knowledge and to discuss about the way forward for the MSMEs. Particularly today, we're gonna listen to the report from the UNCTAD and UN ESCAP, because this report is about the global initiative toward post-COVID-19 resurgence of the MSME sectors. This project has conducted several activities, including a global report on the interlinkage between competition and MSME policy. We have 3 cases studied from Thailand, Brazil, and South Africa, and 5 regional webinars on how policy recommendation from the report will provide us as a guideline, as a platform for us in order to come up with the support and the recovery for the MSMEs. In this today meeting is the final phase of this project. UNCTAD, Competition and Consumer Protection Balance, or CCPB, has dedicated themselves to preparing various of outputs, including recommended practice for digital platform to harness the interaction between digital platform and MSMEs, guidance documents for MSME and competition institutes in Thailand, Brazil, South Africa, and online course on MSMEs and competition policies. MSMEs are the largest employment in Thailand and significantly contribute to our economy. This is why ensuring the competition, especially in the digital market, in order to remain free and fair for MSME to compete and to have the level playing field for all. This project will be benefit for MSME in the post-COVID in order to ensure the recovery process for them. These two-day events undertaken jointly by UNCTAD, ESCAP, and TCCT is aimed at facilitating discussion and forming policy dialogues among competition authorities, MSMEs, agencies, and private sectors on how to facilitate economic recovery during the post-COVID through fostering MSMEs, digitalization by supporting their access to online distribution channels, eliminating entry barriers, and reducing the uncertainty which MSME is facing in dealing with online platforms. In addition, this event is aimed at providing opportunities to discuss on guidance document for Thai competition and SME institutes, highlighting prominent strategies which could help to address challenges faced by TCCT and Thai MSME agency on competition issues that emerged during the COVID-19 crisis. This guideline document comes at the right time to lead the way for us and Thai MSMEs agency to support MSMEs going back to business after COVID-19 pandemic. I am positive that this could help us to tackle the middle income trap which we are facing in Thai economy. Therefore, I am excited that experts on competition, MSMEs policy, digital platform from both public and private sector today will discuss and exchange views on sharing their expertise and make indispensable contribution toward this goal. I am eagerly looking forward to today and tomorrow discussion and the great progress that we have made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sakon, for reminding us about the importance of SMEs. We are now going to play the video recording from our head of branch, Ms. Moreira. Pierre.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Teresa Moreira, the head of the Competition and Consumer Policies branch of UNCTAD, and I am delighted to be able to address you today at the opening of our final event under our component on competition policy and its contribution to the resurgence of micro and small and medium-sized enterprises post-COVID-19 project. As part of the United Nations COVID-19 response funded by the United Nations Development Account, one initiative entitled Global Initiative Towards Post-COVID-19 Resurgence of the SME Sector was launched in the spring of 2020. My branch, the Competition and Consumer Policies branch of UNCTAD, has been engaged in discussing with representatives from competition authorities and small and medium-sized agencies how competition policies can support the resurgence of this group of very important companies post-COVID-19 crisis. So since 2020, my team has carried out several activities quite closely with the 5 United Nations Regional Economic Commissions, So the Commission for Latin American and Caribbean, ECLAC, it's acronym, the Commission for Asia and Pacific, ESCAP, a good partner of ours and our co-host also today, the Economic Commission for Africa, the Economic Commission for Europe, and the Economic Commission for Western Asia, ESCWA, that is focusing on the Arab countries. These activities included a global report on the interlinkage between competition and MSMEs policies, and also 3 national studies on the impact of COVID-19 on specific SME sectors in 3 countries, Brazil, South Africa, and Thailand. This also led to 5 regional webinars on how these recommendations that have been produced by the global report and from the 3 national studies could support the recovery of MSMEs. For the last stage of this project, my team has prepared various outputs. One will be presented today and is about recommended practices for digital platforms seeking to facilitate the access of micro and small and medium-sized companies to digital platforms through more transparent and fairer terms and conditions. A second output is an online course on SMEs and competition policy. And finally, target technical assistance with specific guidance, documents, and activities have been also drafted for MSMEs and competition bodies in Brazil, South Africa, and Thailand, among others. During this hybrid event, as I said, organized in collaboration with our colleagues and friends from the United Nations Economic Commission for Asia Pacific, ESCAP, and the Trade Competition Commission of Thailand, TCCT-UNCTAD, aims to showcase the products of phase 3 of this overall technical cooperation project, with the aim to enable partners and member states representatives access and to foster dialogue. You will remember that the recommended practices have been circulated for comments. Of course, this is a set of guiding ideas that we will be following up after the project is closed. The issue of access to the digital platforms has been recurring in the context of the previous phase of this project. And frankly, this has been a major issue even before the pandemic times, but also enhanced due to the fact that consumers and businesses turned to online markets during the confinement periods of the pandemic. Various member states have advocated for and raised the issue of digitalization and its impact on small businesses throughout this project. The concerns raised gravitated towards the need to address unfair trade practices, especially in digital sector, for instance, by Thailand, the reform of competition law in respect to the digital sphere, Singapore, the necessity of digitalization of public sector and private sector services to face e-commerce challenges, Moldova, and the imperativeness of amending the legislative framework for digital markets and improve interagency collaboration, all of these as necessary to address digital challenges. This has been suggested by Mexico. The recommended best practices for digital platforms are also aligned with the latest deliberations laid down at the UNCTAD 15 Ministerial Conference that was held in October 2021, and which approved the Bridgetown Covenant, setting the stage for the following 4 years of mandate by UNCTAD. The Covenant recognizes that the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the digital transformation and emphasize the potential role that digital platforms can play to enable many firms and entrepreneurs in developing countries to access international markets. In this context, UNCTAD can play an instrumental role supporting the development and design and the implementation of appropriate and effective policies that foster innovation and that may enable developing countries to effectively participate in the digital economy, reaping the developmental benefits of digitalization. The Bridgetown Covenant also advocates that the digital transformation must incorporate micro-enterprises and small and medium-sized enterprises, including women and youth-owned, as they represent most of the employment in developing countries. In this context, the principles issued by UNCTAD, again as a form of guidance, aim at streamlining the relationship between platforms and micro and small and medium-sized companies, especially in developing countries, seeking to prevent possible abuses of market power by these global players. During the last phase of this project, phase 3, UNCTAD also embarked in bridging the gap in knowledge and awareness between competition authorities and SMEs agencies. Taking into consideration the lessons learned during the 2 initial years of implementation of this project, we developed an online course on SMEs and competition policy, which is structured around 5 modules. The first one is on the interlinkage between competition policy and SMEs. The second addresses MSMEs challenges, market access and market positioning. The third, MSMEs and access to finance. The fourth, MSMEs and e-commerce and digitalization. And the fifth and final, interagency and institutional collaboration. I would very much like to thank the trainers of each module who are experts in both competition and SMEs policies and span across 5 continents. They are Tula Kaira, Caroline Ariocot, Rachel Burgess, Cassie Lee, Juan Pablo Herrera, Aruna Sharma, and Vinod Kumar. Sincere thanks for your contribution. Finally, I would like to focus on the national aspects of this development account project, in particular in Thailand, which welcomes us today and which I take the opportunity to also thank. I thank, of course, the co-organization of this event, the hospitality to speakers and participants, and to my team, only regretting that I could not be with you in person this time. Thailand has been our partner for a long time in this project. This means to say that they were engaged since the beginning. And this tailored work started during the previous phase, phase 2 of the project, where a country study, as I mentioned, extensive and endorsed by the competition authority, was commissioned by UNCTAD. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the good and comprehensive work by Mr. Tirawat Sharoenrat and by Mr. Charles Arvey. A further formal consultation was held in October 2021 between UNCTAD and the Competition Commission of Thailand, including also the Office of SMEs Promotions, the Institute for Small and Medium Enterprise Development, the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Bank of Thailand, the Office of National Economic and Social Development Council, and the SMEs Development Bank. As a result, UNCTAD's Commission guidance document that will be also presented tomorrow and will be extensively discussed in order to highlight strategies that we hope will help Thailand authorities to address challenges faced by the Competition Commission and by the Thai SME agencies on, of course, issues relating to competition issues, SMEs that have emerged during the COVID-19 period. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, as you will have noticed, we have a full board of speakers and experts to discuss these topics, which remain very timely, and we hope we'll be able to orient somehow policy making post-COVID-19. again, and for closing, I would like to thank you all for your engagement with UNCTAD Competition and Consumer Policies branch for over 2 years in addressing the challenges.
Thank you. We are going to thank our chief, Ms. Teresa Moreira in absentia, for giving us an overview of the work that we are doing these 2 days here, and also outlining the collaboration that we have had with Thailand through TCCT, our study, and also with ESCAP as our sister organization in this region. So now we are going to have Ms. Ndtp presenting to us her opening remarks representing ESCAP, and of course we appreciate our collaboration. Thank you.
Okay, Professor Sakorn Waran Yuwatana, Chair of the Trade Competition Commission of Thailand, Mrs. Teresa Moreira, Head Competition and Consumer Policies Branch UNCTAD, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by welcoming you all to Thailand and to thank you for coming here today. It's a pleasure actually to be here speaking for ESCAP with our partners in UNCTAD and the Trade Competition Commission of Thailand. This event is actually my second hybrid event this year, as we start to come back to an almost normal way of doing things before COVID. And I must say, I'm very excited to see you all here in person today. Before we start, I would like to introduce a bit about ESCAP. We are the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, and is the most inclusive intergovernmental platform in Asia and the Pacific region. ESCAP is one of the 5 regional commissions of the United Nations, which promotes cooperation among its 53 member states and 9 associate members in pursuit of solutions to sustainable development challenges. Apart from being an intergovernmental platform, one of the main functions of ESCAP is to be a research institute for the region. ESCAP's research touches on many areas of relevance to MSME, such as the contribution of small businesses to social inclusion and building strong communities, the difficulties faced by smaller businesses in accessing the credit and finance needed to grow their businesses, the challenges of developing sustainably and of building a successful enterprise while minimizing waste and pollution. In our role as a research institution, but one with a practical focus, we have recently released our second edition of the Policy Guidebook for MSME Development in Asia and the Pacific, which covers all aspects of national policy making related to MSMEs. Creating guides and tools that are of real use for policymakers is an important output of the research stream of our work. It was with this focus that we created the guidebook. The guidebook was also informed by the current work stream that UNCTAD has been involved with, including an important regional dialogue we held on competition policy last year. In our guidebook, a section devoted to competition policy notes the important matters that governments should consider when considering the effects that misuse of market power can have on MSMEs. Our new policy guidebook was released alongside a new online resource center for MSME policy, which presents another avenue for getting important policy information into the hands of national policymakers. My colleague Benjamin will present the guidebook in more detail to you tomorrow. Likewise, we have been pleased to work with UNCTAD as they have created research outputs of their own that we are here today to discuss. The behavioral recommendations for digital platforms is a document, unlike previous guides we've seen from international institutions. By looking at the new digital economy, digital marketplaces, and the way these threats affected MSME during the COVID pandemic, UNCTAD has brought us a document that I'm sure will be interesting and useful to you all. I believe that when it comes to matters of coordination, dissemination, and alignment of internationally relevant policies, a UN event such as this one is certainly a good fit for the subject matter. Ladies and gentlemen, the health concerns of the pandemic have pushed MSMEs to explore new opportunities to transform their traditional face-to-face activities into online platforms. Digitalization has fast become the new priority for MSMEs and governments across the Asia-Pacific region. While businesses have incorporated digital business practices even prior to the pandemic, such as e-commerce platforms and digital communications, we must admit that these have now become a requirement for MSME survival in the so-called new normal. For our work in ESCAP, hearing from experts and key stakeholders gathered here today from across the globe about the importance of digital platforms for MSME development and the difficulties of making good policy in this area will be of great interest to us. And moving forward from here, ESCAP is currently focusing its work in the MSME space on environment, social, and governance matters. In this regard, I think we will also gain a lot from today's discussion as we better understand the relationships of small businesses with digital platforms and any follow-on effects this has on the sustainability and behavior of MSMEs. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, I would like to say that ESCAP in its role as a regional economic and social commission stands ready to give support to all our member states. And we are ready to translate our research and knowledge products into practical policy implementation that will be useful to all of you here today. And with this, I would like to say thank you again and look forward to a productive discussion. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much, colleague, Ms. Ndtp. And we're thanking our representatives from our three organizations for setting the framework and the tone for today. And we're now going to go to the next session, a substantive session. And before I do that, I would like to make a housekeeping announcement that we would like to take group photo. Just when we go out for lunch, we will go downstairs and we will take a group photo so that we can keep the memories of this important event. So we are going to go to the next panel, which talks about the importance of digital platforms for sustainable economic development for MSMEs, access in the attainment of the UN SDGs. And for this panel, our moderator is Dr. Akalapong, and I invite him to come and take us through the next very exciting session, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we think this would be the important session that we think we can introduce the importance of the digital economy with the connection of the SME. So today we have 7 panelists. May I invite the panelists to in the front of this table, near front table. We can start from, please invite Dr. Shaishana Mitpan, Executive Director of Electronic Transaction Development Agency at the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, please. And the second one, Mr. Clark K. Louis, Sustainable Development Officer, Division for Sustainable Development Goals, Department of Economics and Social Affairs, United States, DESA. And the third one, Ms. Rusier Ojeda Cardenas, Vice Chair of the Competition Committee, American Bar Association, ABA. Thank you. And the fourth one in this room, Mr. Natapon Devitak. He is Executive Vice President, Saha Pibun Public Company, and a member of Joint Standing Committee for Commerce, Industry, and Banking, Thailand. And then we also have the panelists virtually online. So we can start from Ms. Madurena Leo Lopez Gaudos, Public Policy Manager from Meta. And the sixth one, Valeria Jordán, Digital Development Observatory, Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean, ECLAC, online. And the final one, Ms. Nadesha Nikolevane Pustavolava, excuse me if I pronounce wrong, Head of Competition Advocacy Division, USA Economic Commissions. Thank you. So I think everyone is on the panel. So before we start the discussion, I would like to introduce some style effects that I think it might be important for our discussion. During the COVID-19, actually, we can see three main style effects. The first one is the COVID-19 pandemic has speed up the digital transformation. And you can see that after COVID-19, the demand in the digital platform may be increased substantially. So, and this can emphasize the potential role that digital platform can play to facilitate the access to the world market. You can see in Thailand, we have the much opportunity to connect with the digital platform, and then we can connect to the world market by exporting or importing. The second fact that we would like to mention in this panel is digital transformation can offer the opportunity to design more efficient and effective state administration. That we have one panelist from the government agency that can reflect in this. It also can contribute to the modernization of the economy and society. So that means digital economy have a lot of importance in terms of the economic development. The last fact that we would like to mention in this before we start the discussion, the progressive digitalization of the economy and the society carry out some risks. What's the risk? The risk of excluding or limiting that benefit for the large economic sector of society, especially MSME, or the vulnerable group like low income, low skill labor. What this might be the important challenge that we have this event. We would like to discuss on this. So I would like to start the discussion from the region, the big regions, ECLAC. So in Latin America and Caribbean regions, COVID-19 is affecting digital transformation differently across country with unprecedented socio-economic consequences. So I would like to start from Ms. Valeria. What is the role and the potential of the digital platform promoting development in ECLAC region, and how does the digital development observatory program assist in this regard. Please, Ms. Valeria.
Thank you. Good morning and well, also good evening for those who are from this side in the world. I will switch to Spanish for my presentation. I would like to share with you some slides. So please let me know if you can see them. You can see the presentation? Okay. Bueno, como se ha dicho, las plataformas digitales están teniendo un rol cada vez más.
Digital platforms play an increasingly significant role in the global economy, specifically in the LATAM and Caribbean region. The market value of the digital ecosystem as a whole has gone up 400% in the world and 21% in the Latin American and Caribbean region. The lesser growth in the region, although it is modest, is still relevant because the traditional sectors of the economy have reduced the volume by 30% within the same period. The boost of the digital economy in the region has grown alongside internet platforms with 360% growth globally and 133% regionally. Up to March 2021, the value of the digital industry accounted for around 29% of the total value of the global economy and 13% of the regional economy, which describes the importance of digital platforms in the economy. As you mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic has bolstered digitalization, especially the development of e-commerce platforms. This has not been an exception in the region. The e-commerce platforms are the digital platforms with more growth of 350% between 2019 and 2021. Over 90% of the region's e-commerce is conducted locally within the nations, enabled by regional platforms or Mercado Libre, which is the equivalent of Amazon in terms of size, and other platforms such as Falabella or Tiendas Americanas. Foreign companies operate in the domestic markets, but most of the cross-border trade is concentrated in the major international platforms such as Amazon and Alibaba. The digital platforms marketing strategy is drawing in more local buyers, which is positive due to the new ways that these local sellers can sell, and there's an increase of the competition between the platforms. Just to give you an example of how relevant these platforms are for the SMEs, we can see that 50% of online products offered by SMEs have recently been published between March and September 2020. In the past, we did not use the digital channels. The SMEs were not using the digital channels, and most of these companies have migrated to marketplaces or platforms such as Mercado Libre for their sales. So they went from 2% to 24% of acquisition of new sellers within the post-pandemic period, which has given rise to the fact that in 2020, around 4% of the region's SMEs are operating on the Mercado Libre platform, creating from 4 to 11 jobs average. On the other hand, we've also seen an increase of digital entrepreneurship throughout the region. 86% of startups that emerged between 2021 and 2021 are digital technologies dealing with marketplace or software platforms. In 2021, the investment tripled in such endeavors, adding up more mature endeavors. This is why we have regional unicorns. The digital unicorns are pretty much focused on the e-commerce segment, on fintech, and agtech. Agtech has grown significantly in the region, and this is because the consumption channel and the production channel chains can optimize themselves by bolstering the production of natural resources and fostering sustainability. In this slide, I am showing you a few examples of how digital platforms have a positive effect and contribute to the sustainable development of the region, especially agriculture, where we see the growth of SMEs, creating agricultural value chains that provide the opportunity to small producers of having technologies such as sensors, IoT tools, and software solutions, or marketplaces, so they can sell their products as to create improvements in key aspects of the production to improve the production management, business management, and to also improve other elements such as the sales and the distribution channels. We have seen that some of the benefits offered by the no longer e-commerce marketplaces, but these are sectorial marketplaces such as the agricultural marketplace or the IoT platforms for agriculture, allow for improved business performance, productivity gains, both on and off farm through marketplaces, with improvement of the use of natural resources, the soil, water, fertilizers, pesticides, among others. And we can also better manage the demand to plan the harvest and to engage in waste reduction. When it comes to management, there significant improvements have been made as to improved inventory and logistics controls and improved access to credit due to risk reduction perceived by the small producers, because most of them find it difficult to access loans. And agricultural IoTs, through the data they collect, they do implement financial solutions. They provide financial solutions, and they allow the producers to have improved payment systems to increase the reliability in contractual terms by using blockchain technology, which has all led to digitalization of small producers, because most of the platforms offer training courses and e-learning to use the platforms. Finally, through the marketplaces, you can start getting rid of the middlemen, of the intermediaries, narrowing down the circuit, and small producers can reach larger markets. They can improve their prices and sales volumes as to make more money and increase profitability. We know now that the digital platforms play a key role in development because they give access to new markets, they create employment, contributing to many of the SDGs. SDG number 8 and SDG number 9 involve the industry development, innovation, and to facilitate responsible consumption with indirect repercussions and other objectives such as SDG number 2 of zero hunger to improve agricultural production. We all know, nonetheless, that the digital platforms are characterized by network effects and certain models where the winner takes it all. So we need to assist the competitors and the users, the end consumers as well. At the same time that there's balance in the regulation and we can foster understanding and innovation as well as entrepreneurship. Without proper governance, we face the risk of facing adverse effects in wealth distribution and that there is inequality within the countries between the SMEs, the most vulnerable population, and also between more advanced economies. This is why we need global systems that include cooperation and political dialogue. From the Observatory, we are working on data collection as to have more data for decision making and for policy making within the ECLAC digital platform that meets every 2 years. It collects all the information to define new policies and working areas both regionally and sub-regionally, such as the regional digital market that we're working on in the different commercial blocks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Valeria. So we can see that in the ECLAC, the ECLAC, Latin America and Caribbean regions, the digital platform have the important, very important in terms of the economic development. So you can see that from her presentation is about 50% online product offered by SME. So that means it have the connection between digital platform and SME. That's we can see very clear, and you can see that in terms of the innovation, digital startup in ECLAC has rise because digital economy might offer the opportunity, business opportunity for the new businesses, and you can see the connection between the digital platform, digital economy, and SME in terms of the SDG Sustainable Development Goals in terms of reduce or zero hunger and inclusive growth as well. But we would like to change our attention to another regions, or maybe in Thailand. So we can start a discussion in Thailand. But I can explain in some fact in Thailand. So in Thailand, digital economy is expected to contribute roughly 25% of GDP by 2027. And then COVID-19 lead Thailand to digitalization in high demand. Speed up the digital transformation, as you can see for 2 years across the country. We can see new business opportunity, new platform coming up during the COVID-19, and maybe they have a lot of number in terms of the startup after the COVID-19. However, the digital transformation might raise some concern. That's I also mentioned this. The concern on the lack of regulatory infrastructure and the process. This is the key thing that we would like to hear from this panel. So, and we need this regulatory or regulatory framework to ensure the digital transformation arrive at the benefit to the SME and the overall economy. May I invite Dr. Shaichana Mitpan, could you tell us more on the importance of the digital economy for economic development in Thailand? And what is the current development of regulatory infrastructure and process to ensure the digital transformation that can distribute the benefit to SME and the overall economy. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, and good afternoon, good evening for some regions. I'm working for the government. I'm from ETDA, Electronic Transactions Development Agency, which is an agency under the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society. Our organization is responsible for promoting the use of electronic transactions because we believe it's more efficient. It promotes transparency and in some cases, fairness. MSME is the focal area of the government and as also digital economy. The Thai government has announced the digital economy and society policy since year 2014. So it has been a while, and we have been doing a lot of work in this area. For example, in the infrastructure side, we have broadband access to all small villages. And that's part of the government project to provide broadband access to our citizens in Thailand. So that allows, MSME to get access to the digital market. In Thailand at the moment, though the number is varying all the time, but we believe that we have almost 50 million internet users in Thailand. We have about 76 million people in Thailand. And when people get access to the internet service, they can also get access to the global internet users of more than 4 billion people around the world. And that's present the opportunity for the MSMEs, which usually, often the case, they are family businesses. And during the COVID-19, MSME has been using digital tools to gain access to the market, to communicate to the customer, to the supplier, and also for the recruitment when they have to transform themselves and adjust their business processes to get advantage of the digital economy platforms around the world. So as for the legal infrastructure to support MSME for digital economy, actually Thailand has adopted the model law on e-commerce and electronic signature since year 2001. And this has been a long time. Actually, all businesses and the government agencies can use digital means for communications for transactions since year 2001 already. That's mean electronic documents, electronic signatures, they're all recognized under the Thai legal systems. And that's follow also the model law of the UN. And we are on the way to modify the law to accommodate the new model law from UN to be announced. That's the electronic transferable record. So we are pretty much up to speed on the legal infrastructure to enable electronic transactions in Thailand. However, we have very little knowledge about the platform economy. And in Thailand, we have, if we do have, we have very little digital platform service providers. Usually these services are provided from abroad, and Thai citizens are mostly the users of these platforms. So we have little data, we have little knowledge about these operations of these different platforms. But we see a lot of disputes and concerns and problems arises from the use of digital platforms. For example, from our online complaint center, we are operating complaint center 24/7. Last year alone, we received about 50,000 cases, but mostly from the consumer side. They don't get goods that they order. The goods are delayed and those kind of stuff. We also received complaints from the merchant side as well. And that's a little bit related to the competition, which we sometimes communicate with the OTCC office. From this ground, based on the Electronic Transactions Act that we have, we draft up a royal decree in order to do a soft regulation on the digital platforms. Actually, we have 3 levels of regulatory tools. The very low level is notification. Before platforms operating in Thailand or to the Thai citizens, they have to notify our office. That's the basic level, the lowest level of regulation. Then that's the level that we decided to go. But higher level of regulation is registration and licensing. These 2 levels, we have not decided to go at those 2 levels yet for the platforms operators. And under this draft royal decree, we plan to understand the business models and the ecosystem of these digital platforms in order to know the mechanics inside and how can we enable fair and transparent operation of the platforms. Under this royal decree, there are a few provisions that I would like to mention. For very, very small platforms, for example, if individuals operating a platform with income or revenue less than 1.8 million baht per year, or business entity operating a very small platform with revenue less than 50 million baht per year, they have a very, very little duty. They just inform the contact information and the revenue before the expense and the number of users. Those are the criteria that we use to judge the risk level and the need for regulation. So for a very small platform, we just get basic information and we don't do anything with them. For larger platforms, we look at laws existing now and also draft laws such as P2B, Platform to Business Regulation of the EU, DSA, Digital Services Act, and DMA, Digital Markets Act. Those are one of the major laws or draft laws that we looked at when we drafted our royal decree. So for the platforms with the function as intermediary services or search engines, that's the 2 types of platforms regulated by P2B. So we adopted those concepts and then we asked them to notify us with the few of information, such as the contact information, the types, the name and the types of the platform they're operating, the revenue before the expense, the number of users and the types of users that they have on the platforms, and the top 5 complaints types and how they handle them. This information will allow us to be able to assess the risk associated with different types of platforms. So that's a basic level of platforms. We have another provision for a different type of platform. The first one is for very large platforms. This concept is similar to the ones in DSA and DMA. For these platforms, we ask them to do risk assessment in addition to information they have to provide. We also ask them to do risk mitigation for high risk activities. We ask them to also implement security measure and have crisis management plans. There are 2 other types of particular platforms. The first of the 2 is the high risk platforms. And the second of the 2 is the platform related to critical infrastructure. So with these platforms, we don't know much about them yet at this stage. So we ask them to do risk assessment. And then we look at the risk and then we'll probably in the future provide with the provision necessary to mitigate those risks. As for basic remedial provision that we have under this draft law, we ask this platform to provide channels for complaints and also before they're closing the businesses, closing down the platforms, they have to notify the users 60 days in advance or 120 days in advance for very high-risk platforms. So these are the basic provisions that we have in our draft law. We hope this law will be passed by the end of this year and might be enforced starting next year. This is a very, very basic law that will help us understand the ecosystem, this business model of these different platforms. On the way, we are working with OTCC on a similar law, which is a draft act on platform economy, and it will pretty much look at the DSAs and DMA, and maybe we look at how these laws operated within the EU, and with lesson learned, we might have a law that is suitable for the Thai environment. And that's the basic information about our legal infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shanshana. That's we can see that in Thailand, the digital platform play the crucial role in terms of the interlink between the economy and the SME and small business in Thailand. And you can see from his presentation is about the progress and the speed up of this development might be seen in the near future. But in terms of our concern, that's we think we need to have regulation on digital platform. We in process to develop the regulatory tools, for example, like the risk assessment that might include in the new law. And maybe we're gonna have the digital platform act that's similar to the model like in EU in the near future. But hopefully we can that act can pass can enact in the near future. This is might be digital platform regulation development in Thailand. But in terms of the private sector, this might be another player that can link the small businesses in Thailand to the market, to the world market. I think the trade facilitation might be the key thing that we can see the interlink between the digital platform and the small business in Thailand. Could I invite Mr. Ndtp to tell us more on what is the key role that private sector can address in this point, the digital platform and the benefit for the SME? Thank you.
Thank you, Khun Akrapon, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all distinguished participants and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ndtp Vitak. I'm from private sector, and today I'm here as the representative of the Board of Trade of Thailand and also the Joint Standing Committee for Commerce, Industry, and Banking. I would like to share with you the experience of the Thai private sector in initiating, in developing a national digital trade platform, which this is the this platform connects all private sectors in international trade ecosystem together through the platform. So we have exporters, we have importers, we have banks, we have logistics service providers, for instance. This is all private business entities dealing with international trade business. So in the past, as an exporter, we have a lot of problems in documentations because we have to deal with a lot of parties, with a lot of documentations. From our survey, we found that we may need to at least go through almost 30 processes. We have to deal with more than 10, 15 parties along the process. And we have at least 50 or 60% of our time repeating the task, inputting information into each forms, talking to parties. So that's a pain point of exporters. So in this digital economy era, we think that digital economy can help, can improve our life and can help us in working. We can reduce man hours in preparing documentations and doing information exchange through the process. So we, the private sectors, sat down together and think that we should do something, we can do something. So we initiate the project called National Digital Trade Platform, which is the single integrated digital platform connecting stakeholders in international trade business together, both exporters, importers, banks, logistics service provider. This is the B2B digital platform. It's not e-commerce platform, but it is e-trade platform, which e-commerce platform is the platform that you buy and sell things. But this Ndtp will help you after you issue the PO, after you have agreement on the purchasing. After that, what happened? After that, manufacturers need to buy raw materials to produce, maybe ask loan from banks, and then arrange the logistic service, and then send the documents to related parties, and then send the products to buyers in another countries. This Ndtp will facilitate and streamline all the documentations and information exchanges among stakeholders. So I believe that this Ndtp will also help MSMEs in exporting their products to international markets, because you know that the exporting process and importing process is painful, it's complicated, it's duplicated, it's there are a lot of unnecessary activities along the process. So this Ndtp will help everyone, not only the big corporation, but also MSMEs to export their products easier. As you can see on the slide, that the purpose of Ndtp is to simplify business process and eliminate unnecessary activities relating to import and export business transactions, to shorten turnaround time on import and export activities, to prevent fraudulence and double financing transaction, and to increase financing accessibility for SMEs. I'll talk about the last 2 points on the slide. How we can prevent fraudulence and double financing transaction. What is double financing? When the exporter asks for financing from banks, let's say if I have a PO or have an invoice from buyers, then I use this PO or invoice to pledge with the bank and ask for financing. But in the past, if it is the paper invoice, the paper documents, so I need to show this document to the banks, then the first thing that all banks will do after receiving this paper is what? They have to verify that this paper is real, is authentic, and is not used with other banks. Sometimes banks found, sometimes banks could not find it, meaning that an exporter can receive financing from this bank and also at the same time receiving financing from this bank. We call double financing. So there is a risk of commercial banks. But with digital platform, with the technology today with blockchain technology, the banks do not need to be worried about this problem once they received this document from the platform, because the platform will do the checking or the checking for you, meaning that the bank can approve the financing faster. And along the period of time when commercial banks have data or have information of the particular exporter, this company, they have track record of this company, then in future, they can consider giving financing based on the transaction in the past, not based on the collateral they have, because we know that collateral is another issue that MSMEs have in asking for financing from commercial banks. So this kind of things can be done through the Ndtp. And Ndtp, they not only connect the business parties together, but they also link with the government authorities through so-called national single window platform, which is G2G platform of the Thai government. So Ndtp will connect with NSW to complete the whole loop. And then in future, actually this kind of digital trade platform, there are several ones in the world already. For example, in this region, Singapore, they have one already. Japan, they have one already. So in the future, instead of exporters talking to another importers, there is going to be the talking between platform and platforms. And I believe that in future, every country will have this platform. And it's going to be the conversation of the platform and platform. And I, as the Thai exporter, I'll be one member of the platform in my country. All right. So everything will be more transparent, will be less time consuming, will be easier for everyone in doing international trade business. All right. And this is the initiative that the private sector is working on. But this platform cannot be done, cannot be completed without the government support. That's why we are working closely with a lot of government authorities, including ETDA. We have a cabinet resolution in September 2019 that the government will support the private sector to develop this platform, and has assigned several government authorities to work with the private sector in developing this platform, including ETDA. ETDA is working on the so-called regulatory infrastructure to make sure that the information exchanges on the platform domestically and internationally is compatible with laws, with regulations, with standards of everyone. That's very important, because if you complete the technical infrastructure, but for the regulatory, you cannot comply with the regulatories and standards, then it's not workable. So EDA is helping us in working through that process. So we're working with custom departments, we're working with Port Authority of Thailand, as well as Revenue Department. They want to connect some database with this platform. The true value of this platform at the end is the big data of international trade of Thailand. So you can see real-time data, and you have a lot of value on the data in it. And Yes, as I mentioned, that Ndtp is not e-commerce platform, but it's actually an e-trade platform to facilitate trading process, international trading process, which help everyone's lives easier. And that's the experience that I would like to share with you on the perspective of the private sector, the Thai private sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Ndtp. This is the good example of the role that private sector can play to help SME in terms of the international trade. I believe that this initiative might reduce the cost of SME exponentially, and then I believe that this might be the connection between the digital platform, digital economy that might help the SME. Not only the SME, but maybe the business operator that who have the high cost in terms of the exporting cost. And another one is might be you talk about the ease of doing business. That's we need to have the collaboration between the private sector and the government sector to facilitate any in every element to support the SME in access of the market, the world market. So maybe we can change to another view that maybe the experience from the economic integration regions. That we have Miss Nadesha. She is the head of competition and advocacy division to share the view in terms of the experience in terms of the economic integration regions. Please, Ms. Nadesha.
Good morning. I'm really glad to be here today, although virtually. Thank you for sharing your valuable experience. Well, I would like to speak today about our experience as a multi-jurisdictional regulator. Digital platforms can play a pivotal role in facilitating economic integration at regional level by virtue of their core function of bringing together buyers and sellers in different locations. Absent the platforms, these economic agents may be merely not aware of the existence of each other and therefore have possibility of benefiting from economic integration between them. Economic Integration Association like the Eurasian Economic Union, coupled with the absence of customs and other trade barriers, the platforms extend the geographic borders of the relevant commodity markets. So the number of suppliers and customers in these markets respectively grows and thereby facilitates the development of competition by decreasing market concentration and reducing the supplier's ability to obtain and abuse the market power. From the competition regulator perspective, like the Eurasian Economic Commission, the supranational regulator, this is a definitely positive trend. At the regional level, the digital platforms help to reduce barriers to the market entry and thereby facilitate the MSMEs access to market. The platforms facilitate their access in both strengths of market entry available to MSMEs. First, direct linking to customers, and the second, embedding the cross-border value chains as intermediate suppliers of goods and services to larger companies. The first way includes entering of MSMEs in the digital platforms ecosystems that in regional economic integration associations extends cross-border and embraces much larger number of participants compared to ecosystems constrained by national borders of separate states. Obviously, in ecosystems of regional scope, the MSMEs can benefit from access to a much broader circle of their potential customers. The second way of MSMEs market involvement is related to greater awareness of large companies of benefiting from the MSMEs supplies of goods, services, and components for their products. By using the platforms, the larger companies can get the information they may need for organizing their supply chains and tender bids for components, etc., and the MSMEs possibilities of providing them. Thus, the MSMEs can upgrade their own skills and competences by following standards and product specifications and using the relevant technologies and licenses provided by larger companies. A competition regulator views, and we consider both this way as beneficial for customers and meeting the competition regulator's core goal of consumer protection. Given the above-mentioned positive aspects of the digital platform's operation as a competition regulator, we nevertheless are concerned of possibility of abuses of dominance by the platforms and their restrictive and exploitative conduct. The possibilities for antitrust abuses by platforms stem from their core function of linking the economic agents and members of the ecosystems together and impose their own rules of access to the platform services. This provides them with the possibility of discriminatory conduct, otherwise known as gatekeepers' power. We are convinced that at the cross-border level, a multi-jurisdictional competition regulator is definitely better positioned for preventing the platform abuses compared to the national competition authorities. We can coordinate the relevant efforts by the national competition authorities of the member states and conduct our own investigations and relevant market studies in digital area. The Eurasian Economic Commission also benefits from combining the function of the multi-jurisdictional competition regulator with other functions and competences related to the integration, including that in the digital economy. The cross-border nature of the digital platforms necessitates a consolidated response by the Economic Integration Association member states, coordinated by a supranational competition authority. Given its specifics, our specifics as a multi-jurisdictional regulator engaged in competition matters along with other integration-related issues, the Eurasian Economic Commission at this moment adheres to soft regulation that better suits now. Currently, the union's member states and do not impose any binding obligations on them. The Commission undertakes to harmonize the approaches for digital market regulation of national competition authorities of the union member states and to coordinate their efforts on prevention of competition abuses in digital markets. Pursuant to this goal, the Commission undertook a number of coordination initiatives so far. And one of these, we prepared a large-scale survey of competition regulation in digital markets. And it proved to be very helpful for our national competition authorities, and it formed a methodological basis for coordination of national competition policies and digital markets. Well, that's it for the moment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Natasha. Maybe we can proceed to the next perspective or the experience sharing from the American Bar Association that might reflect in terms of the business community. So, Ms. Lucia, what does the digital business community consider attainable in terms of the corporate governance and responsibility with the focus on the SME market access? Please share your experience or your view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development for the invitation to this event and recognize its initiative to elaborate the recommended practices for digital platforms, and start with the disclaimer that I will express during this event are my own views based on my experience as a non-governmental advisor on competition issues. Along the lines of the reflection that I would like to share with you today, there are 5 elements underlying ideas that I want to emphasize from the beginning. First, the digital transformation is already here. And if we don't want to leave anyone behind, competition policy is the right way to do that. There are many legal initiatives around the world to regulate digital platforms in different ways, and not necessarily in the most efficient and harmonized manner. So this is a problem for global platforms and local platforms, and for consumers that could have different treatments depending on the country in which they operate. Best practices will help to give worldwide coherence. Business community needs certainty on the rules in which they operate to flourish, invest, and develop. This could be attained through self-regulation mechanisms. Certainly, the recommendations are complementary and flexible solution to aid pressures for heavy and burdensome regulations that could disincentivize innovation. And advocacy is key for the adoption of best practices. That's the main ideas I want to share. As we are all aware, the digital economy has changed how we view the world and carry out our day-to-day activities. Digital platforms have been one of the most disruptive mechanisms through which this phenomenon has taken place. As the OECD has recognized today, online platforms backbone so many of our activities that we become dependent on them for every task in our personal and professional lives. As noted in the recommendation, all of these holds for a structural transformation. These transformations is also supporting governments to enable human rights, such as education and health. So for some context of the scope of this change, the digital economy has increased in participation in the market more than 4 times worldwide, and 7 times in Latin America region, vis-a-vis with traditional industries like oil and gas, mining, and telecom. It is not an understatement to say that digital platforms have changed the connection between supply and demand. In the words of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, many companies recognize that the platform business model is a way to survive and take advantage of the trends imposed by society. For micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, digital platform presents unique characteristics and opportunities for them, such as accessing new markets, boosting supply chains efficiency, sourcing channels, benefiting from economies of scope and scale, and reducing search and verification costs. In this regard, digital platforms come in a variety of functions and services that provide different benefits for such enterprises. For example, Google, Facebook, and YouTube provide marketing, advertising, branding, consumer services, and external communication functions, which provide access to global markets, adjacent data analytics, artificial intelligence for targeting consumers, and market segmentation and impact analysis. Micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises have benefited from this market disruption. In Europe, for example, an estimated 82% of such enterprises promoted their products and services on online search platforms in 2019. Amazon and eBay provide e-commerce or online marketplace functions with addition to the above, enable micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to access lower transaction costs, such as payments, shipping, or logistic costs, and enhance client trust based on review system on the platform insurance. These circumstances is more relevant depending on the size of the enterprise. For example, in Europe, small firms selling online are more likely to try to outsource their sales to a marketplace than a medium-sized or a larger firm. So this implies that the benefits of marketplace are more remarkable for small players. For example, make clear that digital platforms are significant input of micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Nevertheless, there's still a difference between the benefits on digital platforms in developed countries and in developing countries due to the infrastructure and internet penetration issues. They still have a massive relevance in the growth of these enterprises. That is why an initiative should also promote virtuous cycle of the investment and competition in the growth of such infrastructure. Allow me to use Mexico, my home country, as an example. Although we have internet access, Mexico is a country where we are far from reaching the coverage found in developed countries. As an overview, 83 of 100 people have access to mobile internet services. However, 52% of households still have no internet access. On top of that, Mexico lags behind other countries in using high-speed fixed internet connection technologies, which are vital for the development of the digital world. So in the same regard, while 20.7% of the business employ the internet for their activities, its usage primarily focused on online searching, governmental paperwork, and banking service. So there is a huge potential of growth there. However, digital platforms still have considerable relevance for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. In Mexico, for example, data tells us that small business using digital tools have grown 4 times more than those who don't. Regarding search engines, prior to choosing, visiting, or contacting a micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise, 92% of the Mexican consumer carry out an online search to identify it. Moreover, businesses that outstand by their profile on Google are 90 times more likely to attract consumers. 64.4% of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Mexico perceive that digital tools will be critical for economic recovery for the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as the recommendations correctly diagnosed, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise activities are essential for developing countries' economies. In Latin America, approximately 60% of the jobs depends directly on such enterprises. In Mexico, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises employ between 67% and 72% of the Mexican active force, contributing around 52% for the gross domestic product. As we all know, due to their unique characteristics, digital platforms tend to be dominated by big firms that could hold market power, that allows them to determine the conditions under which users will access to their services. In this regard, developed countries have struggled to keep in line these players. European investigations against self-preferencing, bundling, and collecting information restrictions to independent providers come to my mind. However, some developing countries do not have the same tools to keep competition in these markets. And of course, also institutional arrangements and coordinating among authorities also represents an important challenge. For example, in Mexico, we have different authorities for competition. Instead, in fact, we have 2, and another different authority for consumer protection. So this institutional design is relevant. In this context, the recommendations are not just a tool for developing countries to enhance micro, small, medium-sized enterprises' performance, but hopefully they will constitute a guide for them to build the criteria and case law to guarantee non-discrimination, fair, transparent access to these key contributions to the economic growth. In this, most of the concerns I have mentioned, such as self-preferencing, bundling, anti-competitive restriction, and uses of data are reviewed and addressed in the recommendations with general guidelines easy to understand to enable self-regulation and achieve the benefits for the economies. The beauty of the recommendation is the flexibility with respect to the adoption and the certainty that its implementation would provide to the business community. Global and regional digital business will face the question of fragmentation, the governance practice tailored to each jurisdiction, or adopting a single standard. Suppose platforms choose to take different measures per jurisdiction. In that case, there is a high risk that regulators will involve and possibly impose strict regulation standards, making the whole scheme very inefficient. and difficult to comply with. In my experience, private stakeholders usually prefer self-regulation over having a heavy regulatory agency scrutinizing every step that they could, and that could be inefficient. Therefore, I believe that adopting the same principles and rules applicable to developed countries' jurisdiction is not only desirable, but attainable. Of course, this scenario will be feasible if the right incentives are implemented. Consumers, stakeholders, and governments need to enforce the value of being a good corporate citizen, and that this is also good for business. This is happening in other spheres of corporate governance. We are now seeing companies committing to goals such as social responsibility, gender equality, green policies, or any other forms of sustainability. For instance, one relevant task will be to advocate for its adoption with the participation of all the relevant stakeholders. For the academics, private bars, they could help to disseminate the importance of sound competition in digital markets and the virtue of self-regulation schemes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. You mentioned a lot of things. You highlight a lot of things. You raised the concern as a competition, and the big company or the big player in the digital platform markets might be one of the not concern. But I believe that the next panel might discuss on this one. But I can see that many concerns as you mentioned, and if you can just step back and to see in terms of the United Nations sustainable goals, sustainable development goals. So I believe that digital platform raise a concern that have the interlink with the SDG, maybe in terms of the inclusive growth, in terms of anyone. And Lucia just mentions digital platform should not leave anyone behind. So I would like to ask Mr. Clark, is the United Nations system involved with the private business community to bridge between the member state and relevant actor in the digital market, and any link to the UN SDG? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. My name is Clark Kulio, from Sustainable Development Officer from the Division for Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And as chair and also my fellow panelists have just mentioned, MSCs, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, are indispensable engines for inclusive and sustainable economic growth. I think my colleague from ECLAC has already mentioned about the important linkages of MSCs towards Sustainable Development Goals. 2, no hunger. 8, decent jobs and inclusive growth. 9, about innovation infrastructure. And 12, sustainable consumption and production. But moreover, MSCs are also our economic backgrounds. So we support MSCs which is to support the job engines of all our communities. We support MSCs to support jobs, to protect livelihood resources of groups in vulnerable situations. As my colleague panelists have mentioned, MSCs, a lot of MSCs, they are informal business. 90% of MSCs in Africa and in other parts of Asia, they are unregistered business, but they are important because they are operated by families, by our mothers, fathers, and brothers. They provide, and sisters, they provide important livelihood means. So we are protecting MSCs, we are safeguarding critical livelihood resources. At this point, I would like to remind colleagues that today, 27th June, is the United Nations MSC Day, Micro, Small, and Medium-Sized Enterprise Day. 5 years ago in 2017, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously endorsed the General Resolution to support and designate today as MSC Day, considering the indispensable connection of MSCs with SDGs and also with the essential principle of leaving no one behind for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And based on that, UNDESA has been working with 9 countries around the world to support MSCs, to maximize their contributions to SDGs, and moreover, to improve their resilience towards uncertainties and economic shocks that are looming from the gradual recovery of the world from the COVID-19 pandemic. Allow me, please, ladies and gentlemen, to thank organizers, my dear colleagues from UNCTAD, ESCAP, and also we are very grateful for the invitation of the government of Thailand for us to join this important workshop. Our efforts focus on MSC resilience, and also we join our fellow UN colleagues from UNCTAD, from ECLAC, from ESCAP, from Economic Commission for Africa, and also Middle East. We work together to support MSC surgeons from the COVID-19 pandemic. From DESA, we have been working closely with governments and member states in Africa. For example, we just finished a COVID-19 impact assessment with the government of Kenya. We have interviewed 400 MSCs across the 45 counties in the country. And we realized that almost 90% of the interviewed MSCs expressed the business unfortunate income loss, customer loss during the COVID pandemic. And the majority of them, they have adopted e-commerce models. They are really eager, very keen to work with digital platforms to pursue B2C business models. Similar situation apply in other countries like in the Gambia. We work with about 200 informal MSCs and also cross-border traders, as well as more than 300 MSCs in the Philippines, in the creative sector. And we noted MSCs who had already exposure to e-commerce and digitized the business before the COVID pandemic, they suffer a bit less than others in the pandemic. And some of them even reported business growth due to the pivoting of the business model to e-commerce. And based on our experience of working with these countries, there are more data I can further share. We realized there are three aspects, some of which have already been addressed by my colleague panelists. One is the connectivity that relates to infrastructure. In many developing countries, digital connection is not a given. You have to earn it. This applies especially to youth and women-owned MSCs, especially those in the poor rural area. They simply cannot access to such digital infrastructure, or the cost of accessing is too high. So how can we solve this problem? To inclusively accessing MSCs to digital infrastructure. This is the first challenge we realized. And second one is the capacity issue. My colleague has mentioned about digital entrepreneurship. I think it's a very important topic. How can we work together to strengthen capacities that elevate digital entrepreneurship? For example, we work very closely with one Kenyan women entrepreneur in Mombasa, who produced a very famous peanut butter in her county. COVID came, no customer, so she decided to convert it into the e-commerce. These are the challenges she met. First, how she can promote the visibility of her product and her company onto the digital platform in competition with large enterprises. Second, how can she control the logistic cost? She told me, now I can sell my product to Nairobi and to other parts of the country, but my costs are increased because I have to pay the logistics, packaging, barriers, you name it. How can I do that? And thirdly, how can I timely receive the money that are paid by consumers online into my offline pocket? So these are all the challenges I think policymakers need to pay attention to, and all of us are responsible and accountable to support capacity for digital entrepreneurship and to build simple, transparent, and user-friendly policy environment that improve such capacity and such entrepreneurship. Third one, information gap. that has been mentioned by my colleagues. That also relates to informality. For example, 2 weeks ago, we launched our project in Zimbabwe. Almost 90% of MSCs in Zimbabwe are informal business. Colleagues, let us face MSCs as a diverse ecosystem. We have high growth MSCs, for sure. After all, Google, Facebook, every these famous digital giants, they start from a micro enterprise. But we also have perhaps 80 to 90% of these ecosystems. They are owned by women, by youth, by poor. They just try to operate their business as a way to fulfill their livelihood. This is type of subsistence-based business. It's not high growth, but we still need to support them to honor the principle of leaving no one behind. And by the way, they can still, these subsistence-based MSCs, they are still important to inspire frugal-based innovation, low-cost innovation, community-accepted innovation. So how do we capture their demands and challenges? Considering they are informal and their demands are frequently off the radar of policymakers. How can we do that? So we are supporting the government of Zimbabwe to formulate the country's first monitoring framework for MSCs to timely capture such demands and to inform policymakers for evidence-based policymaking process. And finally, from UNDESA, we would just like to take this opportunity to thank the United Nations Development Account and also the United Nations Peace and Development Fund, through which the People's Republic of China is the main donor, that have supported us to pursue such efforts. And through this important workshop, we would like to explore further partnership opportunities to join hands with colleagues to maximize digital platform as an important tool for innovation, for inclusive and sustainable growth. I would like to thank my panelists again, from whom I have learned a lot, and I look forward to future opportunities of partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can see that the digital transformation just hold a great promise for the economic development, but at the same time raise many concerns. Last but not least, we have the last speaker, the last panelist from the big company. So we would like to hear from you, Ms. Marianela Lopez, the public policy manager, Meta. That's what is the role that the big company can address to this our discussion. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Marianela Lopez. I am a competition policy manager at Meta, formerly known as Facebook, and I'm delighted to be with all of you. I see a lot of people connected from all over the world. It's unfortunate that I couldn't make it to Thailand, such a beautiful country, but I'm delighted to be here with all of you. Before I get started, let me thank Teresa Moreira, Pierre, Juan Luis, and everybody at UNCTAD who had invited me to come here. It's a great opportunity, and not often we don't have that many opportunities to share with all of you the perspective of what is called a big company like Meta. So thank you very much for having me here. I've been following the work of UNCTAD for many, many years. Sometimes we agree with the report, sometimes we offer a different perspective, like it's probably the case today, but it's always a learning experience, and just for that is really worth it. I've also been listening with great attention to my esteemed colleagues, and I am with great gratitude. I can say that we agree on so many points. First of all, as Teresa Moreira, the director of UNCTAD Competition Policy, mentioned in her remarks in the beginning, it is very important that we keep a channel of communication open between the private sector and policymakers. And I think Meta, with regards to SMEs, as I will share with all of you later today, has been really trying to work together with all policymakers, because in the case of Meta, we are really concerned about MSMEs being left behind and not being incorporated into the digital economy. So we really think it's important to exchange experiences and to learn from what we can work on together to make sure that inclusive development is achieved. Otherwise, things won't work in the digital economy. And in this regard, I think it's very important not to forget something. Whereas Thailand is an exception in terms of progressing and overcoming challenges regarding the telecommunications infrastructure barriers that exist in many developing countries, we cannot forget that Meta or no other digital company can work together with MSMEs to digitize and unlock the power that the digital economy can bring about if they cannot access the internet. This has been said by at least 3 panelists, and I add myself to that, because Thailand is an exception, but typically in the roadmaps for the digital economy for SMEs, we often see that the structural challenges regarding telecommunications remains low in the agenda. So until we don't prioritize that, and we unlock and we give access to everyone in the rural and urban places to the internet, we won't be able to help achieve the sustainable development goals. So yes, we can discuss about regulating or not digital platforms, but we cannot forget that telecommunications and access to the internet is the essential input for this to work for SMEs. So that being said, I wanted to take this opportunity as well, given the report dives into the need or not to regulate digital platforms. I want to share with you the perspective I live at Meta, with the hope that I will offer a different viewpoint on how we feel about competition. So at Meta, we're a big company. We cannot deny that. And we understand that bigness comes with scrutiny, and we understand that you might be worried about our size, and that might yield to the consideration of adoption of regulations. And in all honesty, we have made mistakes in the past as a company, especially in the privacy space. We have learned from our mistakes. We support, for example, privacy regulation. So there are many things that we're also learning as the digital economy progresses. But when it comes to competition, at least at Meta, we feel competition is fierce. We are subject to a lot of competitive pressure in the digital market, and we live under a circumstance that whether we innovate or make sure our users get new products and services, or the company dies. And competition in the digital space is very, very fierce. So for those of you who don't know, Meta is the parent company of companies like Facebook, like WhatsApp, like Oculus, and many other platforms. For every single product and service that we provide to the market, there is at least 2 or 3 competitors. The most downloaded app right now in social media in the world is TikTok. iMessage from Apple is governing messaging, and if the most common form of video and marketing is YouTube. So I think when ahead of looking around, and I am aware that there are a lot of conversations going on in the world about how to regulate digital platforms or not, I really encourage everyone to engage in a dialogue, in a constructive dialogue with these big companies, because each of the companies is different. I've heard a lot of examples, and very good examples of marketplaces that focus on retail, on online retail. That's not necessarily our focus. Our focus is to connect people. And as you can probably imagine, in connecting people, small businesses play an important part, because we believe we can bring a lot of added value to MSMEs that want to first find a set of customers that otherwise would be impossible to find, but also do it in a more efficient way. So for example, the person that was selling peanut butter could actually access a wider market and become more efficient. In return, adding more value, creating more jobs in her local community and contributing to the economy. So we really believe this is essential. So before I would caution against rushing into adopting DMA style regulation and actually see and find out what works and what doesn't work before engaging in regulations that might actually hurt small businesses. If, for example, following the example of the peanut butter, if that person can use personal advertising to explore the digital economy, if some of these regulations make digital advertising more expensive for MSMEs, that might not run in favor of these small, medium-sized enterprises. So there's a lot to discuss, and there's a lot of experiences and knowledge to share between the private sector and the public sector. So I think the way forward is to keep that conversation going and learn from each other, because I think, at least from Meta, we're convinced that MSMEs are the backbone of the economies, and we cannot leave them behind. And the COVID healthcare crisis was the perfect example that allowed Meta to learn a lot. And we realized, and we have been putting a lot of investments in learning how COVID has impacted SMEs, and obviously has hit very hard SMEs, and many of them didn't survive. But we have figures and data to share with policymakers, because we realized that those SMEs that were digitized or learned fast how to use the digital tools that we provided to them survived. And that was especially important for those MSMEs in the hands of women, because there is data showing that MSMEs owned by women that didn't catch up with digitization made it worse than those owned by men, for example. So as the COVID progressed, Meta decided to think about new products and services we can launch to the market to help these MSMEs. And we hope that we can continue to learn to be able to create more services and products that might help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So some of these products and services are, for example, shops, or the business suite, or the fast track invoicing that can help solve some of the issues regarding how to receive the money and how to issue the invoices. We have also launched a program to train MSMEs, because we can produce the best products and services that you could possibly imagine. But if the families owning that small business is in Zimbabwe, nobody tells them that they even exist. Nobody tells them how they can use personal advertising to reach out to their customers of interest in a more efficient way and at a lesser cost. They're not going to be able to use them. So the idea we have in mind is to continue to work with governments and agencies to make sure that we can help and add value to the MSMEs community. And to that end, we also started publishing the global report on medium-sized businesses, which focuses on analyzing data around how different small businesses progress in terms of digitization, which we hope can help inform policymakers when they define or design these digital roadmaps. So the idea I bring here today, and that's what I'm very grateful to UNCTAD, is to stress the need to continue to have a constructive dialogue. For those countries that are willing to engage, at least with Meta, we are available. For those that haven't yet, I'm happy to open those channels of communication, because we really believe that the MSMEs are important, not important, are essential to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think we really need to work together. So with that message, I turn it over to the, thank you.
Thank you so much. That's we can see it's great to see that the collaboration that's the Meta that's try to have the many initiatives. But I believe that our panel don't have any time for the Q&A. But anyone, just in case if you have the question, you can drop to the chat box, and then we can try to respond to your question. But I just would like to have some word to conclude our session. It is great to have like all stakeholders in the same panel, and I believe that digital transformation will make the better world and will not leave anyone behind. Thank you so much.
Yes, hello, everybody. I would like just to say that we have finished the first panel, number 1. We are going to have a photo session with all participants at 1 p.m. at the ground floor. That's first announcement. Second announcement for everybody. We remind you, everybody, that we have the interpretation in 4 languages: English, Thai, Spanish, and Arabic. So please connect to the Zoom connection and make sure that you have the possibility to get to your language, Thai, English for the Thai participants here in this room as well, and to the ones connected online. The other announcement is that the coffee break that was announced in the agenda has been reduced now because we have gone beyond the time, and unfortunately, so we are going to do, instead of 30 minutes, 15 minutes. So we can start at 11:30. Our apologies, but I think the discussion on panel 1 has been very enriched. And to the chair and the permission of the chair, we would like to invite everybody to come back at 11:30 in 15 minutes. Final point, the lunch will be on the 11th floor from 13 to 14:30 local time, Bangkok. After the photo session. So with that, I'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. And thank you to the colleagues also connected online. Thank you.